All right, so 6.4 is all about journalizing these adjusting entries that we made. So if you remember, we adjusted two different accounts. We adjusted supplies and we adjusted insurance. And we moved some of that money from those two asset accounts into their own expense accounts. And so we need to write them in our journal so that we have a record of them. And we're going to do it just as the end date of the fiscal period or the month. And we call them adjusting entries. And if you remember the supplies, we started the month or throughout the month, we accumulated $620 worth of supplies. At the end of the month, we had a balance of 90, which means we used $530 of those supplies. And then we need to journal them and then post them to their own. Well, this is the worksheet, like a breakout of the worksheet. And then this is the journal, and this is how we would journal them. All right, you're going to have the January 31st. It's going to be an adjusting entry. That title's already going to be provided to you. And then you'll just have to remember where you don't even need to figure out where the debits and the credits go because you did that already on the worksheet. So supplies gets a credit, supplies expense gets a debit. When we journal, it's a 2-line thing in the general column, but we always put our debits first. Okay. And so the same thing happens with insurance expense too. So if we head over to that Cengage work together, we are right here. It gives us the worksheet that we just did in full. And then if we scroll down, it has a journal. And it's already given us that adjusting entries title, which is nice. So we just have to start below it. We're going to use the date as of April 30th. That's going to be our date. We have to journalize the adjusting entries that we had made. So we had made one adjustment to supplies, one to prepaid insurance. So start off with the date, April 30. The first one that we're going to do is, so we're working in this column here, the adjustments column. Find our debits first. Supplies expense for 153. Supplies expense. A debit for 153. And then our credit was supplies, the asset account. And that got a credit of 153. And again, you don't even need to really, hopefully you know like why you're putting them where you're putting them. But up in this adjustment column, we have supplies gets the credit, supplies expense gets the matching debit. And that's all we do. And that was, again, like on our, we don't need, it doesn't really have like a document number because we got it out of the journal itself. We're going to use the fact that this was journal page 8 in the next step. But for right now, this is all we need. All right, April 30 supplies and supply expense. We'll do the same thing then for insurance expense. Insurance expense gets a debit of 125. And our asset account, remember, was called prepaid insurance. That gets our credit for 125. And that's it. That's all you got to do for this step. 2 entries, 1 date per entry because we have a 2-line entry. Debits first, credits next. Debits match our credits. And we're good. Grade this one. Check that we're good. Move on to the next step. So just like chapter 3 was all about journalizing, chapter 4 was about posting those totals to their own individual ledgers. And so that's what we're going to do on this one. Again, we have our journal that was provided. That's what we just worked on. And then if you remember back to chapter 4, you have all these general ledger forms, these account forms for each and every account that we're using. Okay, there's our petty cash. We set that one up in chapter 5. We just set up insurance expense and supplies expense. And so we need to record all of this down here. All right, because they're all in our general column. So we're going to do that. So let's start off with our supplies expense debit. And we're going to go through and kind of follow that process that we did in chapter 4. So we go down to supplies expense. It was 153. So we'll go supplies expense. Date was April.30. The debit was 153. The post reference is the page, the journal page number, and this was journal page 8. So in the post reference, we go journal page 8. And then the last step is to go back up to our journal and put our account number 550 to show that we did post this in the post reference. Oh yeah, you do have to do the balance. Thanks. Forgot about that. So now this one, that should have been step 4. Debit balance of 153. Thank you for that. And that's what we do. And that's good for supplies expense there. Next step, we'll do our credit to supplies. So if we go down to supplies, we'll see that we already had an April 30th balance that was posted previously for 228. That should match what was on our worksheet, right, for the original trial balance of 228. However, we have a credit here that we need to record for 153, and that was also on April 30. So we don't need to type in April again because we already have an April there. That was a credit for 153. Record your new balance. So now we're working the same thing. So we started off with a debit balance of 228. We had a credit for 153. This credit reduces this debit, and what's left over is that balance of $75. And that's the same thing that we had transferred or extended over to our balance sheet column as well. Post reference, that was journal page 8. Our account number here is 140, so we'll go back up to our journal, post it for 140. Good there. Let's do insurance expense. That was $125. We'll pull open the insurance expense, April 30. That was a debit for 125? Yeah, debit for 125. New balance on this is 125 in the debit. Post reference, it came from journal page 8. This is account number 530. Go back up to your journal and show that you posted it to account 530. All right, last one, prepaid insurance. We're going to handle this one just like we handled supplies. Prepaid insurance, we have a credit for 125. The date was April 30 again. We had a credit for 125. So the credit reduces our original debit balance of 375. If you subtract 375 minus 125, you get 250, which again was that amount that we had carried over to our balance sheet. Post reference, journal page 8, that's where that came from. We are account number 150, so we'll go back up and show that we pulled that from or posted it to account number 150. And that should be it. All good. Green is good. So go ahead and finish up your other one that you were working on, on your